we used any sedative drugs or anything like that. And, you know, we have cooperated fully with the police. We'll answer any queries, any test that they want to do at any time.
That is the conclusion of the process. And that's what we're here debating. The conclusions of the process versus the conclusions of the group.
So you
They are not the same.
the conviction of the inspector.
Why would we be shocked? We're not denying
I'm
the
asking
existence.
you.
Why would we be shocked? We're not denying the existence of the dogs or anything else. It's evidence we're interested in. There is no evidence that Madeleine is dead.
Hello everyone, and welcome. As a seasoned crime analyst and storyteller, I'm here to unravel the complex details of true crime cases and present them in a way that's both engaging and easy to understand. Today, we're diving deep into the latest developments in the Madeleine McCann case. Madeleine McCann was just 1 week shy of her 4th birthday when she disappeared on the night of May 3, 2007 during a family holiday in Portugal. From that moment, from the instant her mother, Kate, cried out the unforgettable words, "They've taken her," Madeleine became the world's most recognized missing child. Right from the start, Kate and Gerry McCann were unwavering in their belief that their daughter had been abducted.
For has been with Madeleine. Madeleine is a beautiful, bright, funny and caring little girl. She is so special. Please, please do not hurt her. Please don't scare her. Please tell us where to find her.
They described it as a targeted, carefully planned act, most likely carried out by someone with predatory intent or connected to human trafficking. According to Kate and Gerry McCann, someone had been watching them during their stay in the seaside resort town of Praia da Luz, quietly observing their routine, noticing how each night the McCanns and their friends left their children asleep in their apartments while they dined just a short walk away. And then, on the evening of May 3rd, in what might have been no more than a narrow 2-minute window of opportunity, that person struck. They believe Madeleine was taken from her bed as she slept, vanishing without a trace. That's the story the McCanns have stood by from the very beginning, and the one they continue to fight for. The unshakable belief that their daughter was abducted. But there's another side to this story. We're digging deeper. We're exploring the evidence, the inconsistencies, and the overlooked details that may make you question everything you thought you knew about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Did you kill your daughter?
No, that's an emphatic no. I mean, the ludicrous thing is what's been purported from Portugal is that Madeleine died in the apartment by an accident and we hid her body. Well, when did she have the accident and died? Because the only time she was left unattended was when we were at dinner. So if she died then, how could we have disposed or hidden her body, when there was an immediate threat? It's just nonsense. So, and if she died when we were in the apartment or fell and did, why would we cover that up?
Beyond the headlines and the public appeals, there's the evidence, the pieces tucked away in official files that most people never see. The kind of details that don't always make it into polished press conferences, but that can completely shift the way you understand this case. When you begin digging into the Portuguese police files, a more complicated picture starts to emerge. Buried in those documents are witness statements, including one from a friend of the McCanns, that would later be altered by Gerry McCann himself. Timelines given in the early days of the investigation, when placed under closer scrutiny, didn't always line up. Details about where people were and when seemed to shift. Then there were the phone records. The logs revealed calls and messages that raised new questions about the McCanns' movements and communications on the night Madeleine vanished. Why certain calls were made and why others weren't became quiet points of debate among investigators. And perhaps most unsettling of all was the footage of 2 specially trained British sniffer dogs brought to Portugal by expert handler Martin Grime. One was Eddie, trained to detect the scent of human remains. The other was Keela, trained to identify human blood at a molecular level. These dogs were sent into both the McCann's holiday apartment and a rental car they had hired weeks after Madeleine's disappearance. In the videos, Eddie can be seen barking, signaling he had detected something, while Keela also alerted to traces in specific locations. To Portuguese investigators, these findings were not something to overlook. In many other cases, such alerts would have changed the entire course of the investigation. But here, they became part of a much larger, more contentious, and deeply debated story.
Okay, spin around, darling. Right round. Oh, yes, I can see your wings.
It's a big smile.
Ah, yes. One more, big smile. That's pretty.
Missing without a trace is a phrase you often hear in missing persons cases. But to use it for Madeleine McCann would be misleading, because Madeleine didn't simply vanish into thin air. There were traces, there were clues, there was circumstantial evidence, and there was even forensic evidence. In a later episode, we'll be looking closely at controversial DNA samples with one of the world's leading forensic scientists. Samples that weren't collected from the holiday apartment at all, but from a car hired by Kate and Gerry McCann 3 weeks after Madeleine disappeared. What we know is this. More than a decade later, despite an international police effort and tens of millions of dollars spent chasing answers, Madeleine McCann is still missing. If an abductor truly had been watching the McCanns, then it becomes vital to understand the rhythms and routines the family of 5 followed during their holiday. So let's go back to the very beginning, to the start of the trip that was meant to be nothing more than a relaxing getaway, yet would forever alter the lives of everyone involved. A week that began with sunshine, laughter, and the simple pleasures of a family holiday, but ended with a mystery that still casts a shadow across the world. The night Madeleine disappeared. Travelling with their 3 young children, the McCanns were a family from Rothley, Leicestershire. Their eldest, Madeleine Beth McCann, was just shy of her 4th birthday. She had a younger twin brother and sister, Sean and Amelie, both 2 years and 3 months old. This wasn't a solo trip. The McCanns were on holiday with 7 British friends, a group that would later become infamously known as the Tapas 7. Like the McCanns, several couples in that group had brought their own young children along. During the original 14-month Portuguese investigation into Madeleine's disappearance, certain members of the Tapas 7 would stand out more than others, either because of what they did on the evening of May 3rd, what they claimed to have seen, or because of the statements they later gave to police, some of which drew heavy scrutiny. Understanding exactly who's who in this group is crucial, because a few of them play particularly significant roles in the events of that night. The trip itself had been organized by David Payne. At 41, David was, like Gerry McCann, a doctor. His wife, Fiona Payne, was 34 and also a doctor. They were traveling with their 2 daughters, both under the age of 3. Fiona's mother, Diane Webster, had also joined the holiday and was staying with them in the same apartment. David Payne is important in this story for one key reason. Outside of Kate and Gerry McCann, he was reportedly the last person to see Madeleine alive on the evening of May the 3rd, according to the official version of events given to police. Next in the group were Russell O'Brien and Jane Tanner. Russell, 36, was another doctor and a colleague of Gerry's. Jane Tanner, 37, was a marketing manager with dark hair. They had 2 daughters, both under the age of 3. Jane would become one of the most pivotal and controversial figures in the investigation. On the night Madeleine vanished, she claimed to have seen a man hurriedly carrying a small child away from the direction of the McCann's apartment.
Walked out of the restaurant. up the hill. I passed Gerry. He was talking to one of his tennis friends at the time. And then after I'd passed Gerry, at the top of the road, I just saw somebody walking across the top of the road. So I was a reasonable distance away from them. And that person was carrying a child.
And you say a person, male or
Oh, a male.
It was considered a potentially vital sighting, but police quickly questioned the reliability of her account, and her statements came under intense scrutiny. The final couple were Matthew and Rachel Oldfield. Matthew, 37, was yet another doctor. Rachel, 36, was a former lawyer who later became a recruitment consultant. They were traveling with their 18-month-old baby. Matthew Oldfield's role becomes significant because he told police he entered the McCann's apartment at around 9:30 p.m. on the night Madeleine disappeared, just minutes perhaps before the alleged abduction. All 9 adults and 8 children were booked for a week at the Ocean Club Resort, a family-friendly complex offering kids' clubs, tennis courts, and water sports. The McCanns and their friends were staying in the same 5-story white-painted building made up of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. Many had balconies and patios overlooking the resort. The McCanns were assigned apartment 5A, a 2-bedroom unit positioned at the very end of the block. Tucked into the corner where 2 small roads meet in a T-junction, its location and the layout of its doors and windows would later become central to theories about how and if an intruder could have entered that night. The Ocean Club Resort seemed like the perfect holiday spot for the McCanns and their friends. During the day, the children would be at the resort's creche, supervised by nannies and childcare staff. That gave Kate and Gerry, both active and social, time to relax, play tennis, go for a run, or join the others for water sports. But there was one problem: dining. The resort wasn't one single compact building. It was spread out across several hubs with residential streets in between. The main restaurant, the Millennium, was about a 10-minute walk, roughly 650 meters from the McCann's apartment. On their first night in Praia da Luz, they tried it. But with 3 small children and no stroller, the nightly trek was exhausting. So the group agreed on a new plan. Instead of the Millennium, they would have dinner at the resort's tapas restaurant, a much smaller venue less than 100 meters from their apartments. Convenient, quick, and no need to drag tired toddlers down the road. From the second night of the holiday until the night Madeleine vanished, the group gathered at the tapas bar for dinner and drinks. But they also made another collective decision, one that would spark years of debate. Despite the resort offering a nighttime babysitting service from 7:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. at just £10 an hour, the group decided not to use it. Instead, they would leave their children sleeping in the apartments and take turns checking on them roughly every 30 minutes. In her 2011 book, Madeleine, Kate McCann explained their reasoning. The twins and Madeleine usually went to bed around 7:15 p.m., so taking them to the creche at 7:30 only to bring them back after a late dinner would have disrupted their routine. The resort was quiet. It was low season, and the arrangement felt safe. Gerry even likened it to dining in your own garden in a 2007 Sky News interview.
This is a resort that offers childcare facilities, babysitting facilities. Why then were the 3 young children left alone in the apartment while you were having a meal?
I think if you know the location here, which you've seen, what we did, I think, and we've been reassured by the fact in the thousands of messages from people who've either done exactly the same or said they would have done the same. And for us, it really wasn't very much different to having dinner in your garden and the proximity of the location.
The daily rhythm was always the same. Around 5:30 p.m., the nannies would bring Madeleine, Sean, and Amelie to a dining area near the tapas bar for high tea, a light evening meal. After that, Kate and Gerry would take them back to the apartment for baths, quiet playtime, and bed. By 8:30 p.m., with the kids tucked in, the adults would head to the tapas bar, leaving the child checking system in place. David and Fiona Payne had an electronic baby monitor that allowed them to listen in from the restaurant. The others relied entirely on walking back to their apartments to check in physically. When news of this arrangement became public, it sparked a huge wave of criticism. Many argued that leaving young children alone at night, even for short intervals, was unacceptable. Still, some felt that given the short distance between apartment 5A and the tapas bar, they might have made the same decision. Let's rewind to the morning of May 3rd, the day Madeleine McCann was reported missing. As usual, Kate and Gerry dropped Madeleine and the twins, Sean and Amelie, at the resort's daycare just after 9 o'clock a.m. They collected the children around 12:30 and brought them back to apartment 5A for lunch. After lunch, the family headed to the Ocean Club swimming pool, the spot where the famous last photo of Madeleine was taken. In it, she's wearing a peach smock, white shorts, and a white sun hat, sitting beside her father, Gerry, and her sister Amelie, smiling brightly. According to Kate and Gerry's police statements, they stayed by the pool until around 3 o'clock p.m., then walked the children back to the creche. That afternoon, the couple played tennis, and Kate went for a jog. By about 5 o'clock p.m., the nannies brought Madeleine and the twins to the tapas bar area for their evening meal. According to statements, this was the last time anyone outside of the McCann family and the rest of the Tapas 7 saw Madeleine alive. One of those people was Katrina Baker, Madeleine's assigned nanny. At around 5:40 p.m., Kate and Gerry took the children back to the apartment earlier than usual, saying they were especially tired. Detectives often pay close attention to changes in routine. Sometimes they mean nothing. Sometimes they mean everything. Once home, Kate bathed the children and dressed them in their pajamas. Gerry returned briefly before heading back to the tennis courts. Around 6:30 p.m., Gerry asked his friend David Payne to stop by apartment 5A to check if Kate needed help getting the children to a planned group playdate before bed. Here's where accounts differ. Kate said David stayed only about 30 seconds, while Gerry recalled him returning closer to 7 o'clock p.m. A small detail, but one that leaves a 20 to 30-minute gap at a critical point in the evening. According to the group's statements, David Payne was the last person, apart from Kate and Gerry, to see Madeleine alive. Kate said she ultimately decided not to take the children to the playdate, keeping them in for a quiet evening instead. She later described sitting on the couch with all 3 kids, sharing snacks, reading a story, and Madeleine playing with her engagement ring before bedtime. When Gerry returned from tennis around 7 o'clock p.m., Kate and the children were still on the sofa. 15 minutes later, Kate led them into their bedroom. Apartment 5A's layout is important here. The children's bedroom window could not be seen from the tapas bar. Madeleine slept in a single bed closest to the door, while an empty spare bed sat under the window. Between the door and the window were 2 travel cots for Sean and Amelie. That same window would later become one of the most debated elements in the entire case. Kate read one final bedtime story. The twins kissed Madeleine goodnight, and by 7:30 p.m., all 3 children were asleep. Gerry took a bath while Kate changed, and the couple shared a bottle of white wine before heading to the tapas bar. At 8:35 p.m., they were the first to arrive. The rest of the group joined shortly after, and with that, the now infamous child-checking routine began, a system that would later become a central focus of the investigation. To really understand this part of the night, it's important to picture the layout of the Ocean Club Resort, specifically the distance between the tapas bar and apartment 5A. There were 2 main routes, The quicker way took you past the pool, through a small metal gate, up a set of stairs, onto the patio, and through the sliding doors at the back of the apartment. At a normal walking pace, that route took just under a minute. The longer route involved walking up a sloped road to the T-junction, turning left, crossing the car park, and entering through the apartment's front door. That way took about 2 minutes. When you pace it out, you can see that dining at the tapas bar wasn't really the same as eating in your own garden, as Kate and Gerry often described it. There was still distance and terrain between them and their sleeping children. Now, let's focus on the movements in the critical 60 minutes before Kate McCann raised the alarm that Madeleine was missing. According to the group's police statements, here's what happened. At 8:55 p.m., Matthew Oldfield left the table to check on his baby in apartment 5B, right next door to the McCanns. On his way, he paused outside the bedroom window of 5A, where Madeleine and the twins were sleeping. He later said all was quiet. Oldfield also went upstairs to the Paynes' first-floor apartment. The Paynes were still inside, running late for dinner, so he encouraged them to join the others. At 9:05 p.m., Gerry McCann got up to check on his children. The exact route he took to 5A is unclear. He gave 2 different versions in later statements to police. Whether that discrepancy is significant or meaningless is still debated. When Gerry entered the children's bedroom, he saw Madeleine lying in bed and the twins asleep in their cots. He later described this moment in an interview with Oprah Winfrey, saying it would be the last time he ever saw his daughter.
I went up to check on Madeleine and the twins, and I went into the apartment, and we were really just checking them crying, and the door was...
Checking to see if there was any crying?
Yeah, that was it. And the door was open, I'd left it just ajar, about 5 degrees, and we checked them before we left, and they were sound asleep.
Which door are you talking about?
This is the bedroom door to their room. The 3 children were in the same room. So I actually stepped into the room, and the twins were sound asleep, and Madeleine was lying in her bed, exactly where she was when I left, cuddle cat up beside her head in her blanket.
After checking on the children, Gerry McCann went to the bathroom and left apartment 5A. On his way back to the tapas bar at around 9:10 p.m., he walked down the narrow, steep path that connected the back of the apartment to the resort. It was there that he bumped into another British tourist, Jeremy Wilkins, who was walking with his young child.
I bumped into one guy I played tennis with in the street when I'd gone in to check, and that was the first time, I think, of any of the nights that I'd been going up and down that I saw anyone else, really. 5, 6 nights, and it was incredibly quiet.
They spoke for a few minutes. At this time, around 9:15, Jane Tanner thinks about checking on her children.
The 2 men had met around the Ocean Club during the week, stopping for a brief chat. At about the same time, Jane Tanner left the tapas table. Her account of what happened next would become one of the most important and controversial parts of the case. Jane later told police that as she was walking up the steep driveway, she saw Gerry and Jeremy talking. She claimed she passed them around 9:10 p.m.
And I think you were standing like that, and Jez was there with his pram pointing down that way. Because I think if you'd have been looking at me, because I would have said something, because I would have said about, because Kate had been moaning that you'd been gone a long time watching the football.
I'm almost certain that when I came out, I came over and he was here, and I was like that. That's my memory of it, is like Jez is 6'3" or something and looking up, and then turning in when I finished. That's my memory of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it just...
I mean, it's like I said, that there are inconsistencies, in every major investigation.
And here's the weird part. Despite how narrow and deserted the street was, neither Gerry nor Jeremy remembered seeing her. Jane also claimed to have seen something else up ahead. In the dim light, she said she saw a man carrying a child across the T, moving away from Madeleine's bedroom window. Again, neither Gerry nor Jeremy reported seeing this man.
At the top of the road, I just saw somebody walking across the top of the road, so I was a reasonable distance away from them. And that person was carrying a child.
And you say a person, male or?
Oh, a male.
And just describe that individual to us.
It's about probably 5'8" tall. He was taller than me, but not 6 foot, and so between those two. He was wearing quite a lot of clothes, and that's one thing in hindsight, again, I think was quite odd, because tourists, when they're abroad, Brits abroad, would always have crop trousers or shorts or something, and he had sort of a big heavy jacket and trousers on.
Her sighting, now known as the Tanner sighting, would go on to shape the early stages of the investigation. It reinforced the abduction theory and heavily influenced how police directed their resources in those critical first days. By about 9:15 p.m., Jane had returned to the tapas bar. Then, at around 9:30 p.m., Kate McCann prepared to do her next check on Madeleine and the twins. But before she could leave, Matthew Oldfield and Russell O'Brien both stood up to check on their own children. It's worth noting that Jane Tanner, Russell's partner, had only just returned from her own check about 15 minutes earlier, yet Russell still chose to go, later explaining that their child had been unwell. Matthew Oldfield told Kate she could stay at the table. He would check on Madeleine and the twins for her. She agreed. Unlike his earlier 8:55 p.m. check, when he had simply paused outside their bedroom window, this time Oldfield entered apartment 5A through the unlocked sliding patio door at the back. From the doorway of the children's bedroom, he saw the twins asleep in their cots. But Madeleine's bed was positioned to the left, out of his line of sight. Without stepping further inside, he assumed everything was fine and left.
From the approach down here, you can see straight into the room, so you can see the cots as you were walking in. So it never really felt like there was any real need to sort of go all the way into the room. You could see both cots and see them from there. I was sort of bummed and hard about the angle and things. All I just know is that I had an unimpeded view, and it was just dead quiet, and just why I didn't take those extra couple of steps in.
Yeah, I was saying this earlier, that at no point other than that night did I go stick my head in. That was the only time, because the door was like that for me and I knew I'd left it.
He returned to the carpet bar without feeling anything amiss. Then, at 10 p.m., Kate McCann stood up to pay her own bill. What she discovered next would turn an ordinary holiday evening into an international mystery. A time bomb. Madeleine was gone. Kate McCann burst out of apartment 5A, sprinting toward the tapas bar where Gerry and his friends were sitting. Witnesses later recalled her voice piercing the night, frantic, desperate, screaming things like, "They took her, and we dropped her."
And I rushed out and screamed to the others who were sitting at the table that Madeleine had gone, that somebody had taken her.
I just had this utter sensation of disbelief, and I'm saying they can't be gone, she can't be gone, she must be there. Kate was screaming hysterically that she'd checked and she was gone, and someone had taken her.
In an instant, chaos broke out. People were running everywhere, calling her name, searching the surrounding streets, the pool area, the beach. It was a frantic hunt in the dark. But even in those first minutes, questions began to arise. 26:52. The Portuguese police later wondered why Kate had left the twins alone in the apartment, the very apartment she now believed had been broken into. If someone had really kidnapped Madeleine, could they have come back to rescue the other children? Fear was everywhere that night, but so were the first seeds of doubt.
I just had this utter sensation of disbelief, and I was saying they can't be gone, she can't be gone, she must be there. Kate was screaming hysterically that she'd checked and she was gone, and someone had taken her.
That's just awful. I mean, all the time you're hoping that she's going to appear around the corner, but there's no scenario when someone takes your child that you can feel that it's going to be okay.
you're just thrown into this absolute nightmare.
The search for Madeleine McCann had begun, but so too had something else. Whispers, theories, conflicting accounts. Within hours, the story of a missing child would grow into something much larger. A mystery that would divide public opinion, strain international relations, and place the McCanns under a spotlight that would never fade. In the years that followed, the hunt for Madeleine would become one of the most expensive missing persons investigations in history, costing tens of millions of dollars, stretching across multiple countries, and involving countless leads, false alarms, and breakthroughs that never quite lasted. In the next episode, we'll retrace the first critical hours after Madeleine's disappearance and examine the evidence, statements, and timelines that continue to fuel debate nearly 2 decades later. But now I want to ask you, how do you feel about the way this case grew from a family tragedy into a global mystery? Do you see it as proof of how deeply the world cared, or as an example of how endless theories can sometimes overshadow the truth? If you were in my position, how would you decode the first hours of this case, with focus on the evidence, or with questions about how the story was shaped? And most importantly, after all this time, what do you believe it will take for Madeleine McCann's mystery to finally be resolved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think prosecutors will have enough to stop him before it's too late? And if you want more in-depth true crime stories like this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the story might be old, but justice still hasn't arrived. Thanks for watching. Thanks.